Greetings to everyone who came to the museum and those of you in Zoom land. This wouldn't be possible without a lot of very generous donations. We are an all volunteer run organization and we always rely on Heather for the tech support for these. Thank you, Heather. Thanks, Verlin, for starting the lecture series 5 years ago. I'm Dan Halling, a member of the BHG board, and I organized the current lecture series that runs monthly on the second Wednesday of every month. And although this is the last one, the 2023 year, we run all the way through May on the second Wednesday every month. Our next lecture will be on January 10th. It will be our president, Mike Mossman, talking about Bugs, Donald, Daffy, and Adolf, World War II propaganda animation. You can check out our website page for future presentations and also follow us on a Facebook at Badger History Group /BHG for upcoming events as well. For those who are in-house, make sure your phone are silenced, and those on Zoom, please keep your microphones muted. It's also best to keep your video off too, because that helps with broadband access. And please hold your questions until the end. And those for on Zoom, you can type them into chat and we will ask them for you at the end. Tonight's presenter is Randy Poelma. A very short version of your official bio. Randy is an environmental science program manager within the Ho-Chunk Nation Division of Environmental Health. He oversees multiple environmental programs and projects within the Ho-Chunk Nation and on multiple sites, including at Maa Wákąčąk, the Ho-Chunk land here at Badger. Randy provides guidance and leadership on environmental issues and works to raise awareness about the Ho-Chunk Nation and their programs to protect resources for future generations. Since I don't know Randy that well, I asked some people that work with you.
Uh-oh.
And this from Allison Duff. She's the research ecologist for the dairy forage. She says, I've collaborated with Randy in some capacity since about 2006. He is generous with his time and excellent resource and land stewardship practices, ecological restoration, and environmental monitoring, and demonstrates a commitment to sharing the story of this landscape with students, conservationists, and the general public. We're fortunate to have Randy as an important contributor to the Badger story. And from Kurt Miney, he was our speaker last month. Many of you know Kurt. He says Randy is responsible for not only the land stewardship work at Badger, but on Ho-Chunk lands far and wide. But he has also given special attention to the work at Maa Wákąčąk. He has always been a positive partner in working with other landowners and also in prioritizing outreach and education. Randy also serves on the Lower Wisconsin State Riverway Board. And finally, from our president, Mike Mossman, it takes a multifaceted and motivated person to oversee the management of Maa Wákąčąk, to repair the land and benefit the people who love and care for it. That's Randy. Smart but humble, diplomatic yet straightforward, perceptive. He manages the land for specific goals as well as finding the funding. He collaborates with partners and researchers, engages the public on the land, and navigates tribal government. Though not a tribal member, he is a great ambassador for the Ho-Chunk Nation. His work manifests their respect for the land and is a model for land managers, both within and outside the Badger fence. So, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, almost sounded like a eulogy at times there or something. I don't know. It's very nice, but well, welcome everybody, and thanks for having me tonight. Again, my name is Randy Poelma. I've worked with the Ho-Chunk Nation for over 20 years. I've been in the environmental field for over 30 years, working for not only the tribe, but federal government, state government, and private consulting firms. So a lot of experience doing a lot of different things. So tonight I'm going to talk about the tribe's land here at Maa Wákąčąk. Maa Wákąčąk means sacred earth or sacred land, sometimes you'll hear. It was given that name because of its proximity to the lake just over the hill here in the picture to the north. Devil's Lake is what the white people call it. The tribe calls that Maa Wákąčąk, meaning sacred lake. And that this whole area, including Maa Wákąčąk, is has a ton of history with the tribe, and there's a lot of different stories that are passed down in their oral tradition. So it's a very important area. This is all part of a cultural district for the Ho-Chunk people. And it's an area where there's where they used to live, they used to gather medicine, food. There's village sites, fishing sites in Maa Wákąčąk area, and just a lot going on, burial mounds, things like that. So opening up, I'm sure everybody recognizes this picture. So this week is actually going to be the 9th anniversary since when the land transferred. So it transferred under the National Defense Authorization Act in 2014. Everything looks very different than when it transfers, and this is a good example. So this is a picture of the main line of the rail. So now, of course, there's a beautiful bike trail that people use all the time. To the left in this picture, that's a soybean field that's planted to a pollinator habitat. It's a 133-acre pollinator planting. That's just the most beautiful sight out here in the summertime. A lot of different flowers, different colors, and just beautiful. And the area right next to the trail now is also pollinator habitat. And that's kind of a project that's still in the works, but it's been planted and it's coming along just fine. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about a brief history about the Ho-Chunk people, kind of just some statistics about them, and then I'll get into kind of the land management we've been doing. And I'll talk about the fun stuff, which is this habitat restoration work, and then all the other stuff that comes along with getting this property. And there's a lot of infrastructure work that's happening, utility work, and things like that. So it's all part of it. It's all stuff I deal with, and sometimes it's just not that fun. I mean, I'm a biologist, ecologist type person, but I'm also doing like a lot of just cleanup stuff, building related stuff, utility work. Just, it all comes with it. It's all part of the job. So you just take it all in and just do it. So, all right. So, of course, the Ho-Chunk Nation is a federally recognized tribe. And if you would look back at the treaties would kind of credit them to residing on about 10.5 million acres in Wisconsin. And that would kind of be that area from Green Bay over to St. Paul and everything south of there. And then also kind of the northwest corner of Illinois. And Badger is actually part of the last land cession that's called the Royce Cession. And that was the last taking of land from the Ho-Chunk people, and that was I think it was about 3 million acres that was lost in that last land cession. So right now tribal enrollment is about 7,800 people, and they don't have most tribes, you think of a reservation. Ho-Chunk has a reservation, but it's very small parcels that are reservation status. They actually have about 15,000 acres, but it's spread over like 23 counties in Wisconsin, Illinois, and a little bit in Minnesota. So yes, they do have reservation. Actually, this land out here has reservation status, but they don't have one large contiguous reservation. And that, as a biologist, ecologist person that works in their environmental programs, that's really cool because I get to see a lot of different things, but it's also kind of a nightmare to manage because I'll be driving across the state to Shawano County to do work all over the place, and it's really time consuming, but it's just, that's the way it is. So most of their land now, there's like over 10,000 acres that's trust. So trust would be that allotment land, reservation land, and that's that'd be the tax exempt land. And then they still have about 4,700 acres that's taxable. And every year they're converting taxable land to trust status. There's a process that they can go through to do that, and that's really what they've been focusing on for the last several years. So again, the maps there. So this is the land kind of spread all over, different ownership types, allotment in blue. Taxable land is in red, trust is in the yellow. It's kind of hard to see it. Badger's way down here. Badger's actually their largest piece of land, contiguous land. They have 1,550 some odd acres. By far their largest piece of land. And it's trust reservation status. I think most of you probably know, so this is the disposition of land at Badger, Wákąčąk land here in green, DNR here tan, USDA in kind of that salmon pink colored, and then Bluffview Sanitary District in blue. So getting into land management, the fun stuff. So I'm not going to read all these. You can read through there. So this came basically right from the Badger Reuse Committee report. So these are the goals outlined in the Badger Reuse Plan. And the tribe felt that those were they shared the same vision out here. So restore the natural communities that are still here, or enhance the communities that are still here, or restore different areas, maintain the cultural integrity of the property. Just because this was an ammunition plant does not mean it's any less important culturally to the Wákąčąk people. So I want to always stress that to people that I speak to. This was an industrial site. There was a lot of chemical use out here, but it's still just as important to the Wákąčąk people as it always was. You'll see it mentions the bison program. So we still have bison in the land management plan. That's kind of a long-term goal. There's no timeline on when that may happen. Maybe it'll never happen, but it's still in our plan, and it's something that we still work towards. So the last thing I want to point out is that everything I'm going to talk about tonight and everything you see happening out here, all of that is, we don't have a budget for this property from the tribe. All of that is either grant funded or it's funded by the leases that are out here. So we have a couple different ways to generate revenue from leases, and that's either through agricultural leases. So we'll have row crop corn and beans out here at times as part of a management tool to promote our restoration plan. So we have things in row crops and then convert it to prairie. And then we also have the Sierra Space Corporation up here to the north. They do its research and development on rocket motors and thrusters. So they lease their land from the tribe. They own all those buildings, but they pay us a monthly fee to be out there. So that's how we pay for everything we do. So what have we been doing the last 9 years? Tons of invasive species management. So that top picture, I think a lot of you can probably remember what this looked like 9 years ago. All these roads were pretty much bordered by huge thickets of invasive brush. And kind of the biggest usual suspects are autumn olive was probably one of the biggest ones, and then different honeysuckle species. You get into the wood lines, there's common buckthorn, maybe some glossy buckthorn, although I haven't seen much of that here. And then there's all kinds of herbaceous invasive species, garlic, mustard, wild parsnip, and things like that. So we've been doing a ton of work out here, mainly focusing on the woody invasives at this time. And the way we're treating those is prescribed fire, mechanical means. That Fecon mower there in the picture, that's just a big mulcher head on a skid track loader that mulches up that woody stuff. And then we do use herbicide here. So we don't like to use herbicide, but it's on a project this large, it's really something that you have to do to make a dent in the problem. So as far as burning, I'm not going to go through all these, but as soon as this land transferred in December of 14, right away in the spring of 15, we did our first burn out here. We've been burning every year out here, some amount of acreage, except for in 2020, we didn't burn because of COVID. That pretty much burning was shut down all over the state. And you can see in 2023, we burned about 300 acres. The last couple of years, we're burning like 250 to 300 acres. And that's really what I would foresee us burning in any given year from this point forward. I think those larger burns of 600 to 800 acres, those are really to put a dent in some of these major brush populations. And we've kind of got more of a hold on those populations now. And we just don't want to burn that much off at one time, mainly because it really affects the grassland birds and other species that are out here. So, if you burn off those large areas, that's displacing those species somewhere else. And we don't want to necessarily do that. So, all the burning we do is done by Ho-Chunk burn crews. We also have the Bureau of Indian Affairs come down. So since this is federal land, actually the Bureau has to be here when we burn. So they're kind of the burn boss. And then we provide most of the equipment and the labor. So just, these are pictures of our burn crew. Guy in the middle there has a drip torch. So he's putting fire on the ground. That thing drips out diesel fuel mixed with regular gasoline. He'll walk along and lay fire down. We also have a UT that's rigged up with a kind of a mini flamethrower that shoots out fuel to get stuff going. And then that map is all our different burn units. So burn units, we set them up pretty simple. So they just basically follow all the different roads out here. So it isn't very often where we're actually like tilling in or mowing a fire break. We pretty much are just using the paved roads and gravel roads as our breaks. So it really is quite easy to burn down here. It's easy to burn huge acreage in a small amount of time because of all these good burn breaks we have. Here's some pictures from last spring. So some of you may be able to recognize this. So this is actually burning. This picture is actually tying into the Great Sauk State Trail. So we've made arrangements with the state and the county that if we want to burn off the trail and use the trail as a burn break, they're fine with it. We shut the trail down for the time that we're out there burning, and once our burn's done, we'll open it back up and allow people to go through there. So again, this was spring of 23, and this is burning off. We're burning off this big pollinator plant. Here's some more pictures of it. I think that was about a 70-acre unit that we lit off. This is actually right on the main road here. So just a little bit farther to the east. And you can see in this case, we got 4 or 5 guys out there lighting with drip torches and just employing different ignition techniques. So we got 2 guys staggered here close together. This is the lead guy. He's kind of just getting the fuel going. And then we have other people behind him putting fire down. And what they're doing is once that fire kind of gets going on the guys behind, that'll actually pull the fire off of that fire break off that road and kind of get it interior. So there's less likeliness that it's going to carry any spots over the burn break. So our burn crew is made up of people from all over the tribe. So I have 3 people in my department. We have our natural resources department. People come from the casino. This guy is actually the archaeologist for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. He comes out and helps burn, even though he's really an archaeologist. He just does this as a side gig. So all different people from different walks of life. So here's another picture of the same burn, kind of getting late in the day towards the evening when the sun's setting. And then getting into mechanical treatment methods. So that bottom picture is a forestry mower called a pecan. And that, if you look at that middle picture, that's what we use to mulch up these large thickets of brush. So the reason we want to mulch this stuff up with that unit is because if you try and run fire through there, there isn't enough fuel to get that brush to burn. So what'll happen is, that brush is so thick and so tall, it shades everything underneath it. So there's no grass underneath that brush that'll actually burn and carry fire. And the brush is alive, so it's not dead. It's not going to catch on fire even if you douse it with fuel. So what we do is we go in, we mulch up these real shaded areas and just clear it out, try and open up that mini canopy that's created by that brush, and with the hopes of getting grass to grow. And we really don't care what kind of grass it is at this point in those areas. It could be reed, a lot of times it's reed canary grass, it could be brome grass. We just want to get fuel in there that'll burn so that when that brush resprouts after we mow it down, we can run fire through there, and then that fire will snuff out those resprouts of that brush that's coming back. So the mowing does not, it just severs off everything above ground. Roots are still there. It's still a viable plant that's going to grow. So, so we'll knock it down, we'll burn it. And then after we knock it down and burn, and sometimes we won't burn, sometimes we'll just follow up and herbicide stuff. We'll herbicide the resprout. So there's a long list of different projects over the years. Basically, we feconned about 1,000 acres out here at one point, and got it kind of knocked back to the point where we could run fire through it. Probably the last at least 6 years, we've pretty much only been using fire and spot treatments. So we started out going through a ton of chemical because there was such a huge problem. Over the last couple of years, it's less and less chemical. And I think, so if you look in 2018, we were using 2.2 gallons per acre, and that's the actual final mixed product that you would have in your, say, in your backpack sprayer or on your UTV. And right now we're averaging about 0.77 gallons per acre. So that's not a lot of chemical for an acre. I mean, if you add it all up, when you're treating 964 acres, that's 960, 900 gallons of chemical you're putting out there. But on that large acreage, that's actually very little chemical being used. And it'll get less and less as we convert things to native species and deal with the invasive species. So here's a good example. So thick brush thickets, this is in the spring of 15, actually. So this is up on the northern end. The filtration plant used to be in the background there. This loading dock is still there. That's next to the railroad track. That is no longer there, but there's an unloading dock there. So really thick brush. We ran fire through there in the spring of 15. This picture is, you can see it kind of top killed some of this brush, but a lot of the other stuff came back. It's flowering out. It's fine. It's living. That's when we come in with the forestry mower, knock it all down, kind of reset the clock is basically what we're doing. We're just buying time. And now we're going to follow up. Once that's knocked down, we'll run fire through there again or spot treat it to permanently kill those invasive plants. Let's see here. Let me back up. So you'll see in that concrete, there's spotted knapweed. One thing I wanted to mention is actually next summer, we're going to release some biocontrols for spotted knapweed. There's a little insect that eats flower heads of spotted knapweed, and then there's another insect that actually bores in. It's a root borer, and both of those over time will kill the plants and knock it back. You won't see huge die-off swaths of spotted knapweed dying in a year, but over time it'll knock the population down slowly but surely, and no chemical use or mowing, so it's a real bonus. Okay, moving on to the really fun stuff. So we always think of this as being a grassland system that we're trying to restore. There's also a lot of potential to restore hydrology on the north end. So if you look at that picture on the left there, all those blue lines, those are all, you see a lot of straight lines, and straight lines are not good when you're talking about drainage and streams. So historically, none of those straight lines would have been here. So water would have came off the Baraboo Hills back in the day. It would have flowed down some of these ravines that are naturally in the hills, and it would have came out onto this prairie out here and just dissipated into the ground. When the Army built the plant, they wanted to make sure that there was no standing water anywhere. And there was so much, there's a lot of impervious surface, tons of roads, tons of buildings with roofs on them. All that stuff caused water to pool in certain areas, and the Army came in and they just ditched everything. So we're actually right now looking at ways to kind of correct all things that happened in the past. So we're actually working with Army Corps of Engineers on a watershed feasibility study. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get going. But our restoration work is tons of partners involved with it: Fish and Wildlife, NRCS, Nature Conservancy, BIA, and other people. That top picture, I think a lot of people know what that is. They've seen that. That's the historical vegetation out here. Red color being like the oak opening, oak savanna type habitat. That light tan color being more of the prairie that we all think of. Yeah, here's some of our prairie restoration work. So there's been a fair amount done. I'm pretty happy about our progress. So in the fall of 18, we put in 133 acres. Those are kind of those big fields that border the bike trail. That top picture is from up there. And then we've done some scar plantings. And when I mean scar plantings, these are areas where there were buildings out here that the Army tore down. And they, when they would take out foundations and buildings, they would backfill those areas with just clean fill, which was granular sand. That sand is like the perfect place for spotted knapweed to take root and grow. So we've been trying to, in some of those areas where there's just bare sand, we've been trying to plant native species in there just to cover it up so we don't get invasives coming in. So we've done modest amount. There's only been about 12 acres of those plantings. That's not a lot on paper, but when you're talking about a scar planting maybe being half the size of this room, it's a lot of little spots all over the place that we're just trying to get seed down and get it to grow. I think most of you know we planted that area along the bike trail in the fall of 21. That's another pollinator planting that's kind of in the establishment phase right now. The last 2 summers we've been mowing it to promote our planting. Just this fall, I put in 103 acres out here. And that's, if you were out here over the summer, there was, well, the last 5 years, there's been 103 acres in row crops. And it was 4 years of corn. And then this last year, it was soybeans. So the Hartmans came in this fall, they harvested it. And then I went in there early November and planted it. So that'll be in the establishment phase for the next couple of years. We'll be mowing that. And then at the same time, we'll be kind of moving over and biting off another 100 to 130 acres or more, planting them to prairie. So just pictures of us planting. So we actually have a drill on site that we keep here. We got it on loan from the Fish and Wildlife Service. So they call that a true wax no-till drill. It's made for prairie seed. Again, everything we do out here is funded through grants. We got a nice couple tractors out here that we got through grants. That bottom picture would look good on a tractor catalog somewhere, I think. So, but yeah, we got pretty basic equipment, but you really don't need that much to restore these areas. So, but we got all this stuff on site. It stays here, and we don't really loan it out to other people within the tribe. We just keep it here for our use. And then I talked a little bit about the Army Corps feasibility study. We're still kind of developing plans on how we may be able to restore certain areas out here. But I would say most likely what's going to happen is, I'm just going to step away here for a second. So this stream is actually unnamed. This is the main stream that comes off the Baraboo Hills. I call it Pine Glen Creek. Most likely what's going to happen is we're going to re-meander this stream here back and forth through here, and then it's going to tie into these wetland scrapes. And we may even back some water up into these clay borrow areas, but that's to be determined yet. So the other thing we've been doing is, the forested areas out here, where most of those areas were planted by the Army on tribal land anyways. The DNR has some kind of natural forest, really low quality forest, but on Ho-Chunk land, they planted red pine, black walnut, and some white pine and some spruce. So we've actually taken some of those out, just clear cut them to get rid of them. And those are areas that'll eventually get restored to native grasses too. Kind of switching gears to monitoring and research. So that Pine Glen Creek is actually part of our water quality monitoring program. And that got added in 2016. And we go through this process. Our water quality program is an EPA program. So we have to submit an application to add waters to our monitoring plan. So we did this in 2016. And then once that got approved, we actually incorporated it into our monitoring plan for 2019. So we did quarterly sampling out here in 19. Actually, next year is our next year to sample out here. And we're not looking for any of the contaminants that may be out here from the Army. We're looking at basic water quality parameters. So we're doing things like nutrients, major anions and cations, so sulfate, chloride. We do all the basic stuff, pH, DO, temp, conductivity, things like that. And then we also look at the invertebrate population in the stream and then also the fish population. So the stream out here, the habitat's horrible. It's been straightened. It's just a glorified ditch. It does have fish in it. Doesn't have really, you can get bluegills. You can get some panfish coming up from the ballistics pond. But it's a cold water stream. It probably could support trout, but there's no trout in there. That may be something potentially in the future that we could incorporate into our design. We'll see how that works, but we're going to be monitoring that stream on a 5-year rotation into the future. So and that middle picture that's a picture of some of my guys electrofishing. So I don't know I think some of you have probably seen electrofishing or electroshocking. It's basically like a taser for fish. The cops have a taser to knock somebody down. Electrofishing is the exact same thing. Super high voltage you're applying to the water. It stuns the fish. Stuns them long enough, you can scoop them up with a net, put them in a bucket or a holding tank. They'll come back to life, swim around, and then we'll get done with our survey. We'll stop. We'll ID what kind of fish they are. We'll weigh them. We'll measure how long they are, and then throw them back. And they're totally fine. We do it all the time. So. Oh, I should point out. So this map, another example of how we work all over the state. So these are we have like 30 different water quality monitoring stations all over the state. And some of these are ones that we sample every year, quarterly, and then other ones we sample every 5 years. But we're going all over the place collecting water quality data. And that all goes into a database repository with the EPA. So actually our data can be queried by anybody. It's open to the public. It's used by other agencies like the DNR, Fish and Wildlife Service. We actually have two sites in the state of Minnesota. We share data with the state of Minnesota so that they can review that data and potentially list streams as being degraded and needing restoration if we need to. So wildlife projects, there's a bunch of them. I'm just going to go through these pretty quick for time's sake. We have the old Cannon Range tunnels on the north end. Those actually do serve as bat hibernacula in the wintertime. Actually, I met with the DNR bat person this afternoon, and we did an inventory of what was in there. I think we had, 9 bats in one of the tunnels this afternoon, which is not a lot of bats. I think the highest number we've had is about 20 or so. There's white nose syndrome up there. White nose syndrome is everywhere that affects the bats. But there's certain bat species that aren't affected by it as much as others. So big brown bats really aren't affected that much. We have eastern pipistrelles up here, which is kind of unique. I think we had 5 in our survey today, which is actually one of the highest. A concentration of 5 bats is considered a high number right now for eastern pipistrelles, and that's how bad white nose syndrome is affected that species. So that top picture, that's up in one of those tunnels. That's a silver-haired bat. That one's kind of unique because that one usually migrates, but it didn't this time. It overwintered here. And then we have a lot of other studies going on, and there's been a lot of bird work done by the Mossmans. and Jeb Barzen and others, Charlie Luthen. There's been UW-Madison research students out here for their master's degrees. Audubon Society, there's kestrel nest boxes that have been put up. I think there's, let's see, 7 of them right now that are always full of baby kestrels every year. Rare mammal surveys, again, the Mossmans have been trapping these small mammals, prairie mammals out here, and they'll be doing that again the next couple of years under a grant. We've done some trail camera work, and then there's been kind of the latest thing we've been getting into is some insect surveys, and that's Angus Mossman has been doing a lot of insect surveys, and then we've had some UW-Madison students out here doing bumblebee research. We actually had the Ho-Chunk kids out doing monarch larvae monitoring this year, so that was pretty fun. And we're going to be continuing that next year. We have a list of about 25 rare or listed species out here that would either be state or federally listed as special concern, threatened, or endangered. Most of those are going to be these grassland birds that you're probably all familiar with. But there's also some rare bugs out here. So kind of what we found is, I shouldn't say we, I should say Angus. When Angus does surveys out here, he's finding some really unique stuff. And a lot of times you can kind of look back and say, well, we kind of expected it to be here, but you don't know unless you look. And we find that when you start to look for things, you find things. So we want to really ramp up our research a lot more than what we've been doing. And all that research is really dependent on outside people helping us and volunteers like the Mossmans and others, Jeb Barzen and all these other people. So certainly if any of you are interested in helping with that or know of people that want to do research out here, get a hold of me and we can talk about it and potentially come up with some projects together. I think this is about the end of it. Education and outreach. So we do a ton of, every year we've been doing more and more field trips, education events, and outreach. In 2023, I did 17 field trips. That was too many. Actually, it got to be a lot. So, but it's really one of the most rewarding parts of my job is to be out here and tell people what we're doing and get their reaction. And we have, field trips can be young kids. It can be the Ho-Chunk kids. It can be young students from a local school. But it's really fun when you get people like the Audubon Society coming out and like people that are like, I would call them professional birders, and they're just elated to be out here and they're just, their heads on a swivel, they just can't believe everything they're seeing. So it's really neat to see that. And we've had a lot of people. So I keep track of all this stuff and this all goes into grant applications. That's how we get more money. So, we had 574 people out here that we interacted with. So that's quite a few people. And like I said, we had the Ho-Chunk kids out, a group of about 20 kids. We had them out 5 times this summer. And they were doing both monarch monitoring, and then we would kind of sprinkle in some other activities. And one of the other main activities they worked on was, so these kids are part of the Indigenous Arts and Sciences. So they actually worked on the arts part. So that middle picture, so we're doing monarch monitoring. And then I don't think Chris is in it. So Chris Sweet is a tribal member. He's an artist that works out here in the Leaf Studio. So he actually kind of guided the kids on painting this monarch mural out here. And that's something that is now, I think they took it to the Black River Falls High School because that's where all these kids were from. So turned out really nice, really cool to see the kids working on it. And it was really rewarding because when I had them out doing conservation kind of stuff, there's kind of the bulk of the group, they're not really into it, but you can always see those 2 or 3 kids that are totally into it. And it's like, I just hone in on them, and try and get them interested and coming out and helping more. And it's the same with the art too. You can see a couple students that are really, really talented artists at a young age. And really into it, you know, and it's just really rewarding to see that out here. So, and
Leaf is tuning in.
oh, cool. Yeah. So Leaf has been a big part of getting people out here. And of course, that bottom picture is the installation on the trail that Melanie and the Ho-Chunk families worked on together. And I think some of you probably know Bill Quackenbush here. He's our Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. He comes out once in a while and entertains people. So, oh, I lied. This isn't the last slide. So, all right, this is the less fun stuff, but it's the stuff that needs to get done. So, the tribe inherited a ton of leftover junk out here that the Army. So, the Army, when they came in and demoed stuff or deconstructed the plant, they took anything of value, so metal that they could sell and recycle and get paid for, you know, wire, anything like that. And the other thing they would deal with is anything that was an environmental hazard that they legally were required to deal with, they would deal with. But there's all kinds of stuff that they left that they didn't have to deal with. And those are things like old buildings that were just solid concrete. They didn't have any environmental issues associated with them. They didn't tear them down because they didn't want to spend the money on it. So the tribe is left dealing with them. So there's been several building demos. We've been cleaning up railroad ties we're just about pretty much done with that project. But for 3 years now, we've been cleaning up railroad ties. The Army sold the rails for scrap metal. All those ties left in the ground. They weren't required to clean them up. And for us, they're just a huge issue when we want to do prescribed fire. You run fire through those areas, all those ties want to catch on fire because they're creosote. So you got to go out and spray each one of them out. Plus, we don't want our firefighters breathing in that stuff. It's not good for them. So we've been working on all that. I think the last time I spoke to this group, since then we've demoed the paint store, which used to be a metal building out here that had asbestos in it. The environmental lab got taken down in 22. That had a ton of asbestos on the inside. And then just this year, we took down the cannon range, the blast wall, and the assembly house, which would be on the north end up there by that Pine Glen Creek. So that was just like a huge facility of concrete. So contractor came in, busted all that stuff up. All that concrete got recycled, hauled down to the concrete thing down here in town and got reused. Same with the environmental lab. So pretty much all the wood from the environmental lab got recycled. The steel roof got recycled, windows got recycled, anything that they could use, they kept. So very little of that went to the landfill. And then what we have coming up is we have all this work that's under there in 2024. We already have contracts in place for all this work. So all these electrical lines you see above ground out here, all that stuff's going to come down except for the main transmission line that crosses this property. So all these lines that run up to like the fire station and the Leaf Art Studio, all that stuff's going to come down. We're redoing all the lighting in the warehouses. So that's all high pressure sodium, really expensive to run, inefficient lighting. That's all going to get converted to LED this winter or next spring. We're going to abate the asbestos siding, the tan warehouse out here that still has the old siding on it. That siding has asbestos in it. That's all going to get abated, actually starting probably next Monday. And that's all going to get re-sided and it'll look like the other house. Be nice. And then we're still working on this public access road down there in the corner. And that is that's a joint project with the Wisconsin DNR, and that is basically that's going to be the new public access route to the state public lands, and that's going to be built on the existing roads. We're just going to improve the roads that are out there, and it'll be all new pavement. It's all going to be signed so people actually know where they're going, and it'll be great. So. Here's just some pictures of the infrastructure demo stuff. So that top, that's the cannon range. recycle the metal, munch up all that concrete, get it to a small size where you can load it on big dump trucks and haul it out of here. So right now that's all been hydro seeded. All the grass came up. It's like a big park back there right now. Pretty nice looking. There, that's it.
Randy, I have two questions from Zoom.
Yeah.
So one, they're both from Graham Steinhauer, who's with Goose Pond Sanctuary. The first
Oh, yeah.
question is, have you noticed any germination problems with species with small seeds? Do you think there's a difference between drill and broadcast?
Yeah.
And I'll give you a second.
Yeah.
There's like a one-parter, but there's a second.
I have not noticed problems with germination of different seed species out here. And of course, I haven't done any study to determine that, but just anecdotally, I haven't noticed anything. As far as our restoration, we use a combination of both broadcasting and drilling, depending on what the end result is that we want. So like these pollinator plantings, a lot of that was broadcast, but some areas of that were drilled. This last planting that we did was a little heavier on the grass, and most of that was drilled in the ground. I think, with drilling, you get better seed to soil contact. So you probably have better germination when it's drilled, but you can't always drill, all these areas. Some areas are too steep for a drill, or it's just poor access. And that's when we broadcast seed. So broadcast seeding is a lot easier and a lot faster. And it's a really good method to seed prairies for sure. You just have to usually up your amount of seed to compensate for less germination or germination. So
and then he asks, can you give examples of the non-bird rare species, plants, insects, mammals you have already, but maybe you can repeat some of those?
Yeah, so well, as far as we have the rusty patch, federally endangered rusty patch bumblebees out here. I think there's 8 other species of bumblebees out here. There's silphium borer that I think is state listed, I believe. I think there's a couple different silphium borers out here. I don't know the actual species. I'd have to look it up. As far as rare mammals, they aren't listed species, but they're species that you typically do not see all the time. So I had a picture of a bobcat. Years ago, there was evidence of a wolf out here. I never saw the tracks or scat from it, but there was a wolf out here.
There was a badger out here.
Yeah, I'm sure there's badgers out here. There's certainly black. Yeah, really. There's certainly black bears out here. Yeah, I don't know. And then there's all the other common stuff, but yeah, there's a few other insects that don't come to mind. Yeah.
And then he has a third question.
Uh-huh.
Follow up on pollinator plantings.
Yeah.
What is your average grass rate? If you could repeat the question, maybe the Zoom.
Sure. What's the average grass rate in our pollinator plantings?
Yeah.
So I average that'd be like 1 to 2 pounds per acre. 2 would be on the very high side. It's usually like 1 pound to 1.5 pounds per acre of grass. And the rest is all herbs and legumes.
I have another from Zoom, but why don't we take one from Lucia? So why don't you ask your question, Randy, if you wouldn't mind repeating it for the Zoom people?
Sure.
I was just curious, what plants were native there? And do you follow some of that?
We do, yeah. So what plants are native out here? So we, when we select our species, we look at, you can look at prairies that are in the area. Unfortunately, the only remnant really out here is the hillside prairie, but you can look at some other prairies in the area in Sauk County, look at what species are there. We look at herbarium records. And then, most of the stuff we're planting is fairly common prairie seeds because that's what's available to purchase from the nurseries. Pretty much all the seed we get we purchase it from area nurseries. So, we did get some from Goose Pond, of course, but again, that was really common species. So,
And that was my second question, where you get the seeds from.
Yeah.
And are they from, native plants then? I
Ye-
mean, like.
yeah, so when we order seed, when we bid it out, we put a requirement on there that the seed has to be grown within 100 miles of this site. So it's somewhat local genotype. But yeah, we purchase our seed, and there has been talk about starting nurseries out here, but I think for us, it seems to be a lot easier and more realistic to get things done just to purchase the seed. You get it, there's no labor involved with cleaning it to get it ready to go through a drill or even a broadcast seeder. It comes clean, it's ready to go. We just, and all this is funded through grants, it's funded through NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, Environmental Quality Incentives Program. So that's a cost share program that the NRCS has. That helps fund a lot of our plantings. So the money's there to purchase it. So that's what we do. People certainly collect seed from area prairies, and they may bring it in here and plant it. I mean, we're certainly open to doing that too, to get some of those more rare species. But yeah, the vast majority of our seeds we're buying. And 130 acre planting, I mean, that's the whole box of my pickup is full of seed. It's a lot of seed, and it's a lot of money actually. So it's big dollar amounts. Yeah.
So another from Zoom, are you going to be replanting oaks to restore any savanna or oak opening habitat?
Yeah, so there were volunteers out here, and Kurt Miney, which most of you know. So Kurt, oh, okay. Kurt could tell this better than I could, but Kurt gathered oak acorns and germinated them, and then he had a group of volunteers that planted some oak trees out here, and I think they were along this Great Sauk State Trail. I don't know if they were on just Ho-Chunk land or other properties. Okay, so it was just on Ho-Chunk. Besides that, there's this big grant through Alliant Energy that started a couple of years ago, where they're promoting things to reduce carbon, so their carbon footprint. So the tribe gets thousands of trees from them every year to plant on different tribal properties. Next spring, we're going to get about 300 bur oaks from that, and we're also going to get some wild plum seedlings. So we're going to put those out here too. So we'll be planting some oaks. Most of the tribal land probably didn't have a lot of oaks on it historically. That was kind of more on the glacial till on the state land, but certainly there would have been some oaks here and there. So, and we like oak trees, so we're going to plant some. So I mean, you kind of get into these arguments with prairie purists about, well, where'd your seed come from, and like I'm supposed to genetically test everything I buy, and part of it is you just gotta, I go by what the tribe wants too. So if they want oak trees out here, we plant oak trees. So it's just the way it is. So yeah.
We have another, Bill?
This year was an unusual year with the spring and summer
Drought.
Not traditional.
Yeah.
We only had one brood of tree swallows and bluebirds out here, and their counts have been down the last 3 years. And I attribute the counts coming in to bad weather, where they saw a winter down in the Gulf.
Okay.
The storms down there.
Uh-huh.
But to just have one brood here, and I attribute that, I think, to insects. They have to feed their brood, and the insects were down. Mosquitoes weren't a problem here at all. I don't know if northern Wisconsin they had a mosquito problem, but we didn't hear.
No, I think it was dry everywhere. So yeah,
Yeah, I wonder if this El Nino is going to continue and mess up our birds.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, if I can ask a question on that,
Yeah,
talking about your unnamed stream,
yeah.
how was that impacted this last summer with the drought?
So that still had base flow even though there was a drought and it was extremely dry, but it, you know, was lower than normal, but certainly had base flow to support the inverts and the fish that were. But we noticed the drought definitely in the prairie plantings from other years. So stuff along the Great Sauk Trail that we planted. We definitely noticed it in our row crop ag fields that were leased out. I mean, the soybeans were stunted at about 5 or 6 inches for at least a month and a half or so. And then they finally got a shot of rain and they kind of shot up and they actually did produce beans. But yeah, it was just a dry year. And I was really glad we didn't put any prairie seed in the ground this spring or last fall, because they would have had a really hard go of it to get it established this summer. So, and that's kind of the gamble you take, and that's why we're pretty comfortable doing about 100 acres at a time. So like if we put 100 acres in this last spring, and I don't know how much of it would have germinated. Some of it probably would have germinated, came up, died. Some of it may not have even germinated. Maybe it would have been fine the following year, but at least if you do 100 acres and it fails, it's still a lot of money you're out, but it's not the end of the world. So.
To that, one of the Zoom questions is you mentioned planting native species in the sandfill knapweed areas.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any particular species that you focus on planting in those spots?
Yeah, so in those areas, we're typically using species for those scar areas that are pretty much just sand. So we're using typically a little blue stem is the grass that we usually go with. There's other species that you could plant in there, but little blue stem's relatively cheap to buy. So, I mean, prairie dropseed would be another great species for in there, but that's very expensive. So, little blue stem, side oats grama is another one. We will put in like maybe a little bit of Indian grass or big blue stem, June grass, a little bit of switchgrass maybe, but we typically don't use much switchgrass because it just can take over. So yeah.
Well, it's 8 o'clock. Do we have any other questions, comments from the museum? No. Okay, we have one more from Zoom.
All right.
This is our last question from Zoom. It's actually about I think it's the reservoirs and the salamanders.
Oh yeah.
Are they on Ho-Chunk land?
They are
I
not.
guess what's the status on the salamanders?
Yeah. So they are not on tribal land. That's on state land. And I don't know the status of them.
The East Reservoir is still got water, but the West Reservoir is empty. It cracked and it's done.
Yeah.
And they double fenced it too. Yeah.
So I think those reservoirs they're slated to be demoed at some point. It's just when the state can find money to do it. So it's a huge safety liability to have those up there. They're tempting for people to get into the fenced area and potentially fall in there and drown. So they need to be addressed, but the timeline for when they may happen, I have no idea. So, well, thank you.